Let's start with the flagship of any passenger railway operation, Intercity, the long-distance, high-speed intercity services. And this should be a visibly different service to other trains. It should not be branded the same as the other operators. It should be, or operator, it should be a clear, bright, I think white and blue is quite a good colour, identity. To be honest, turn the LNER livery blue, and that's not far off what I think those trains should look like, But it doesn't really matter hugely what the actual livery on the trains is. The identity of the intercity service should be distinct from other services. And how we build those, how we build intercity from the current range is that it makes no sense to continue to have separate intercity operators around the country. It doesn't make any sense. It should be a single unified, this is the fast way I get from here from where I am to any of the other major cities. It's the high-speed core running on, currently busy mixed traffic, but eventually they'll be running on dedicated high-speed lines, and in some cases might well run on new bypass routes or segregated 4-track railways. There are things that Intercity should and can be doing, but what about the wholesale sort of transfer of the existing operators over? Because, okay, for LNER, Avanti West Coast and the related West Coast Partnership franchise that it's a part of, Hull Trains, ideally, and Grand Central, those run services that I think ought to be run by the incumbent. There should be Hull services that are intercity trains. And Grand Central running up to the northeast, particularly its services up to Middlesbrough and Sunderland, should be run by the incumbent. Those can all be transferred, or equivalent services in the case of the open operators, run wholesale into the intercity organisation. But Transpennine, Cross Country, Greater Anglia EMR, GWR, Southwestern and Southeastern also all run intercity services, but they do not make up the majority of their operations. So Transpennine, kind of in order of how much of them gets subsumed across, to be honest, Transpennine Express, the majority of its intercity services, because yes, Newcastle, Leeds, Manchester and Liverpool are major cities, as are Edinburgh and Glasgow. Those are intercity services they're running. They should be transferred into an intercity operation. Across country, it's long distance, high speed services. The trains that can go up to 125 miles an hour are intercity trains, and good grief, is there an episode on Cross Country to talk about how much longer those trains should be and how they could be the premier long distance service with catering and experiences and bike storage and family facilities to match. EMR, all those fast services that have currently been decimated up and down the middle main line, those are intercity services that should be branded as such. GWR, all the stuff going out along the Great Western, intercity services. Southwestern Railway running its services down to Southampton, those are intercity services, albeit they are running on third rail technology. But they are intercity services and should be treated as such. Strongly believe that, and they should be it should be quite clear which are the intercity services and which are then not the intercity services, which are suburban, etc., etc. And then Southeastern runs the Javelin. That is a high-speed train running on a proper dedicated high-speed line and should be treated as an intercity service accordingly. And that means that those all get snarled up. So LNER, Avanti, easy, wholesale. The others get snarled up, leaving bits of them behind as you transfer across into forming the new intercity organisation. But what about infrastructure and strategic planning? Network Rail has a, this isn't all of Network Rail, but it has a route structure. All the main lines that carry intercity services, that is those that link up Britain's major cities over long distances and at speeds over 100 miles an hour, should be subsumed into the intercity organisation. Should not be separate infrastructure and train operator. They should be subsumed into the same organisation. There are functions within Network Rail that go across those routes. This is a hopeless diagram. It's impossible to find any good diagrams of the actual structure, publicly anyway, the actual structure of Network Rail in totality. But you've got the routes, but also you've got parts of functions of the organisation that go across the routes. Property and stations, certainly some of that would go to the intercity organisation. Elements of those, there are bits of Network Rail that do not sit in the routes would need to go into the intercity organisation as well. So our intercity organisation would include those passenger operators, either gobbled up entirely or partially. It would include those Network Rail high-speed routes, those intercity routes, enabling the intercity organisation to then optimise those to maximise mode shift. Those would be the East Coast Main Line cross-country route, West Coast Main Line, Midland Main Line, Great Western Main Line, Transpennine route, Great Eastern Main Line, the South West Main Line. Network Rail High Speed, as well as an organisation, would be subsumed into Intercity. And then the national passenger operators, it's kind of NPFO, it's part of the organisation that thinks about national passenger operations, would also get subsumed into this body. But we also need to eat HS2, as it is currently, eat HS2 and turn it into the Intercity organisation, but therefore thinking about new high-speed lines into the future, but as part of the overall picture of Intercity operations, not as a self-contained thing off on its own, but as an integrated part of planning for the best mode share for rail overall as possible. So that's Intercity, the flagship of GBR's passenger operations and a self-contained operation that will strive to maximise rail's long-distance passenger mode share. To do this, it would work across national borders in Wales, Scotland and England, although only owning infrastructure within England.